It's funny how people underestimate the consequences of their actions. My name's Ryan. The best way to describe me? I'm a guy who loves deeply, a laid-back kind of man who always puts his wife first, giving her whatever she wants. It took me 2 failed marriages to finally understand that being quiet, giving endlessly, and making someone the center of your world can lead to nothing but contempt and disrespect. That will never happen again. These entitled women think they can do whatever they want, as long as their partners never find out. They hide their guilt in different ways, convincing themselves that everything's fine, until they get caught. And then, suddenly, the regret comes pouring in. Suddenly, they claim they never meant for their husband to find out, never wanted him to suffer. Do they even hear themselves? What are we supposed to think when they say that? Do they not realize they're basically admitting they did it, and the only thing they regret is getting caught? What an insult! I'm convinced that women like this just don't think the way normal people do. Sandy and I met after both of us had walked away from toxic relationships. She had spent 3 years with her boyfriend, but in the end, Billy left her for someone younger, someone prettier. That breakup crushed her, left her struggling with self-esteem issues. The man she had loved abandoned her, and she never fully got over it. I always knew that, and honestly, it bothered me. I'm 6 years older than Sandy. Before her, I was married for 5 years to Charlotte, an unbelievably gorgeous, sexually passionate woman who turned my whole world upside down. I was completely in love with her, convinced she was my forever. But behind my back, Charlotte was with other men. While I was hopelessly devoted to her, she was sleeping around. It took me a whole year to finally uncover the truth. Finding out about Charlotte's infidelity nearly destroyed me. The pain was unbearable. When I finally walked away, I made a promise to myself I would never let that happen again. But after that, I knew trust would always be a challenge for me in any future relationship. Sandy and I both carried our own baggage, and we were upfront about it from the start. I helped her rebuild her confidence, encouraging her to work on herself. She started hitting the gym, getting into the best shape of her life. She spent her free time shopping for new clothes, spending hours at beauty salons, and even picking up tennis. With my support, she completely transformed into a confident, stunning woman. At the same time, Sandy did everything she could to help me move past my trust issues. She never missed a chance to remind me that I was the love of her life, that she was lucky to have me. Every single day, she made sure I felt loved and wanted. And honestly, it worked. Our sex life was still incredible. We were together at least 4 times a week. We cuddled on the couch, kissed like teenagers, and talked about the future. We had even started thinking about having kids. We were soulmates. Life was good. At least, that's what I thought. Then, a week after our 6th anniversary, everything changed. My world flipped upside down. That morning, I noticed something unusual. Sandy was wearing a dress I had never seen before, deep red, tight, and way sexier than what she usually wore on a regular weekday morning. She looked absolutely stunning. Hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, and to top it off, she was wearing ridiculously high heels. Now, I wasn't the kind of husband who constantly checked up on his wife. But we had a home surveillance system, and sometimes, when work got boring, I'd pull up the live feed, mostly just to check on Brandy, our little dachshund. Watching her run around was my way of unwinding from the stress of my job as a bond broker. But that morning, when I pulled up the camera feed, I saw something that made me pause. There was my wife, dressed to kill in that short, sexy red dress, strutting around the house in heels that looked straight out of a nightclub. And I had no idea why. She hadn't looked that sexy in years. My stomach twisted, and a sense of unease crept in. Something wasn't right. Without hesitating, I grabbed my phone and called her, hoping to get a clue about what she was up to. She picked up right away. "Hey, baby," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Just sitting here thinking about you. How's your day going? Tennis today?" "Hi, honey. I miss you," she replied, her voice light and sweet. "No plans today, no tennis. Kara hurt her ankle, so we took the day off." "Oh, that's too bad," I said. "I know how much you love playing. So, what's the plan instead?" "Not sure. I don't really have anything in mind." Maybe I'll just hit the gym for a bit. Hey, why don't we grab lunch? I can swing by and pick you up, I offered, testing her. That's so sweet, baby, she said, a little too quickly, but not today. I'm feeling kind of bloated, and I don't really feel like eating much. I'll probably just have a protein shake after the gym. See you tonight. I love you, baby, she added before hanging up. I didn't say it back. I knew she noticed, because I always said, I love you, before ending a call. Every single time. She was lying to me, and I had to find out why. Now, old habits die hard. After all these years, I trusted Sandy, or at least I thought I did. But I still had a GPS tracker installed in her car, something I originally put in for safety. I rarely used it, but today was different. The moment I hung up, I grabbed my keys, walked out of my office, and activated the tracker. She was heading downtown. My office wasn't far from the city center, so I was able to catch up quickly. 15 minutes later, I spotted her car pulling into a parking garage. I parked on the street and waited near the entrance. 5 minutes later, there she was, my beautiful wife, stepping out in those high heels and that short, sexy red dress. And she wasn't headed to the gym. She was walking toward Finey, one of the most upscale restaurants in the city. My stomach tightened. I told myself I was overreacting, that I was just being paranoid. But then I saw her wave. And that's when I knew. Standing in front of the restaurant was a man. And I was in trouble. I moved in closer, careful to stay out of sight. That's when I saw him. He greeted her with a kiss. Not just a friendly peck, but something more familiar. They exchanged a few words, then he took her hand and led her inside. My chest tightened as I quickly crossed the street. Through the restaurant window, I watched them stand near the hostess, their hands resting on each other's waists like a couple in love. Then, Sandy leaned her head against his shoulder, the way she used to do with me. Tears burned in my eyes, but rage took over before they could fall. I wiped my face, pulled out my phone, and started snapping pictures. I had to capture this moment, the proof I never wanted but now needed. As I kept taking shots, I saw him turn toward her. Then, right in front of everyone, he kissed her. Not a quick kiss. Not something innocent. A deep, passionate kiss. And she kissed him right back. My heart cracked wide open when I saw her arms wrap around his neck, pulling him in even closer. It wasn't just a kiss, it was intimacy, connection, something that was supposed to be mine. Shaking with fury, I switched to video mode and recorded it. Every second. Every movement. I had given this woman everything, and this was how she repaid me? The pain in my chest mixed with a blinding rage, sending me into a dark place. I didn't even know what my next move was. I just stood there, gripping my phone, fighting every emotion ripping through me. Then, the hostess led them to their table. And that's when I saw his face. Billy. Her ex. The same man who had dumped her, crushed her self-esteem, and left her broken. The guy she swore she'd never speak to again. And now, she was back in his arms. She knew exactly how I felt about him. I had made it clear, he was off limits. He was in the past. Yet, here she was, dressed to impress, lying to my face, sneaking off to be with him, and making out with him in broad daylight. In less than an hour, she had shattered everything we built. She lied to me. She got all dressed up for him. She kissed him like I didn't exist. And now, she was sitting across from him, ready to spend the day with him like I was nothing. The level of disrespect was beyond anything I could tolerate. I had promised myself, after my last marriage, that I would never be made a fool of again. And I meant it. This was over. The only thing left to do now was to hear the lies, the excuses, the pathetic attempt to cover up what I had already seen with my own eyes. Still boiling with rage, I got back in my car and drove off. I spent the rest of the day at my desk, trying to wrap my head around how this had happened to me, again. For 5 hours, I sat there, drowning in self-pity, replaying everything in my head. But by the time I left the office, I had already decided on my next move. Now, I was just curious. Would Sandy come clean about her day? Or would she keep up the lies? Either way, her answer would make my decision a hell of a lot easier. It took everything in me to keep my emotions in check as I drove home. I was heading straight into the wreckage of my marriage, and the weight of it pressed down on me with every mile. As I pulled into the driveway, I felt my chest tighten. I was about to lose the woman I had loved, the woman I had respected, and she had no idea yet. When I stepped inside, there she was, setting the table for dinner, dressed in a cute little outfit, all smiles and warmth. The air smelled incredible, like she'd spent the whole afternoon cooking my favorite meal. The moment I walked into the kitchen, she came right up to me, kissed me deeply, and whispered, "I missed you so much today." I almost laughed. Classic cheating wife behavior. Over-the-top affection, guilt-ridden sweetness, like she could somehow kiss away what she'd done just hours earlier. She hadn't been this loving in months, and now, suddenly, she was acting like the perfect wife. No matter how hard I tried to act normal, I must not have pulled it off. She studied my face, concern creeping into her eyes. "Honey, are you okay? Did something happen?" I poured myself a tall glass of Jack Daniels, forcing a smile as I let the whiskey burn its way down my throat. "Everything's fine," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Just a stressful day at work. Let me change and freshen up for dinner, and I'll be right down." Upstairs, I changed into something more comfortable and sat on the edge of the bed, finishing my drink, letting the alcohol do its work, letting it numb the raw edges of my anger. Once I felt a little more in control, I went back to the kitchen. Sandy was waiting for me, looking as happy as ever, her smile bright, the table set beautifully. She was glowing. Of course she was. She'd spent the day with her boyfriend. As we sat down, I decided to test the waters. "This looks amazing, Sandy," I said, forcing warmth into my voice. "And you got all dressed up for me tonight. I appreciate that." Her smile widened. "I love you, honey," she said sweetly. "And I love cooking for you." For a few moments, we sat there in silence, eating. But I knew it wouldn't last. The silence between us grew heavier with each passing minute. Sandy kept stealing glances at me, trying to figure out what was wrong. Did she feel guilty? Was she going to come clean about her day? I was about to find out. "So," I said, keeping my voice calm, "tell me about your day. What did you do for lunch?" She barely hesitated. "Well, after you called, I went to the gym for a couple of hours, grabbed a protein bar, and then came home to cook dinner for you. Pretty boring day." She delivered the lie effortlessly. But when she saw my face, when she noticed the tears welling up in my eyes, her whole demeanor shifted. She quickly dropped her gaze to her plate. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "So, Sandy, how are we going to do this? Are we just going to go straight to the lawyers, or do you want to try therapy first?" Her head snapped up. "What are you talking about, honey?" "Divorce," I said plainly. "That's what I'm talking about." She let out a short, nervous laugh. "Stop being silly. What are you even saying?" "I'm talking about the end of our marriage," I clarified. "Divorce. Separation. Figuring out how we do this while keeping things as civil as possible." Her face went pale. "I don't understand. Why do you want a divorce?" I sighed and leaned back in my chair. "I'll give you a few minutes to think about that question before I answer." That's when the nerves hit her. She started fidgeting, spinning her glass between her fingers. Her eyes darted everywhere except to mine. A long silence stretched between us before she finally spoke. "Did you follow me today?" I didn't even flinch. "No," I lied. Not that it really mattered. I already had everything I needed. But for some reason, I didn't want her to know just yet. "Why are you asking if I followed you?" I added. "Is there something I should know?" I could see the panic rising in her, the hesitation, the confusion. Just like every cheater, she went straight into denial. "Nothing is going on," she insisted. "I don't know what you're talking about." I let her words hang in the air for a moment. Then, with a sad expression, I locked eyes with her, hoping, just for a second, that she would tell me the truth. After a long, tense silence, I finally spoke. Well, Sandy, let me show you what's been bothering me. I unlocked my phone and pulled up a picture, one of her and Billy, right outside the restaurant. A kiss. Now, that one photo, it could have been explained away. A friendly kiss, maybe. An innocent greeting. But I wasn't about to let her off that easy. I had more. And I wanted to hear just how far she'd go with her lies before I showed her the rest. Her jaw dropped, and immediately I saw the tears forming in her eyes. She was already scrambling for an excuse. "Honey, I can explain," she stammered. "It was just a greeting, that's all. Nothing happened." "Where did you even get this photo?" I ignored the question. Instead, I leaned back and asked, "So, how's Billy doing these days?" She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. "Let me tell you how I got this picture," I continued, my voice steady. "I was leaving a software store, crossing the street, when I happened to see a woman walking hand in hand with a man into a restaurant. And for a second, I thought, no, that can't be my wife. But I had to be sure. So I walked up to the window. And there you were, standing there, his arm wrapped around you like you belonged to him. At first, I actually doubted myself. Maybe I was mistaken. Maybe that wasn't really you. But then I looked closer. And there you were, wearing that tight little dress, heels higher than I've seen you wear in years. All done up like you were heading to a damn gala. And then, just to erase any last bit of doubt I had, I saw who you were with. Billy. And suddenly, everything made perfect sense. I paused for a second, watching her reaction. That's when I started taking pictures. Just as you leaned in and kissed him. I held up my phone. And that's how I got this one. Her face crumpled. But I wasn't done. I swiped to the next image and turned the screen toward her. This one showed her wrapped around him, her arms draped over his neck, her short dress riding up so high that anyone passing by could see exactly what she was offering. "You know," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm, "you really did look incredible in that dress. Hair and makeup? Perfect. You heading to a modeling shoot? Or were you applying for a job as a prostitute?" She gasped, her face twisting in pain, but I wasn't finished. "Tell me, Sandy, why'd you dress like that for him? Because I honestly can't remember the last time you wore something that sexy for me." That was when she broke. Her head dropped into her hands, and she started sobbing. I just sat there, staring at her, waiting for the truth. I leaned back, took a breath, and continued. "You know," I said, keeping my voice eerily calm, "this new S22 phone of mine has an incredible camera. The zoom is insane. Let me show you something." I enlarged the image, zooming in on her left hand, the one wrapped around Billy's neck. Then I held the screen up to her face. Her ring finger was bare. No wedding ring. No band. Nothing. "Ha," I mused, tilting my head. "That's funny. In all the years we've been together, I don't think I've ever seen you take your rings off. Not once. But today must have been a really special day." I let the words sink in before continuing. "Now do you get it, Sandy? Do you understand why I'm talking about divorce?" Her face crumbled, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook. "You lied to me this morning. You told me you had no plans, that you were just going to the gym. Then you took off your wedding rings. You put on the sexiest outfit you own. You met up with your ex, the same guy you swore you'd never talk to again. And then, just now, sitting right here at this table, you lied to me again. Told me you went to the gym, that you barely ate. But the truth? The truth is, while I was out working to build our life, you were out playing dress-up for your old lover." Her breathing grew unsteady, but I kept going. "You broke your promise. You kissed him. You flirted with him. You acted like a woman who wasn't married. And worst of all, you made me look like a fool. You came home and lied to my face, again." I shook my head. "I don't know if you slept with him today, or if you were just warming up to it. But honestly, it doesn't even matter. Because right now, no matter what comes out of your mouth, I won't believe a single word." I stared at her, letting the weight of it all settle in. What you did today told me everything I need to know. You don't keep your promises. And when you get caught, you lie to cover it up. You didn't just run into him. You planned it. You dressed up for him. You let him hold you, kiss you. And you took off your wedding rings, Sandy. You literally removed our marriage from your hand. I exhaled sharply, my voice cold and final. In my book, that's more than enough for a divorce. And you know it. Sandy sat there, completely shattered. For the first time, it seemed to hit her. She hadn't thought this through. And now, she was face to face with the brutal truth. She wasn't just some woman who made a mistake. She was a cheating wife. Up until that moment, Sandy had convinced herself it was nothing more than harmless flirting. A little teasing. Something insignificant. But now, she finally saw it for what it really was. This wasn't just a friendly reunion. This wasn't just catching up over lunch. This was an emotional affair. Maybe she hadn't slept with him, but that didn't matter. What she had done was still a betrayal. The realization hit her like a freight train. She was still sobbing, but now the weight of her actions felt suffocating. And worst of all, she knew, if the roles were reversed, if Ryan had done this to her, she would be reacting the exact same way. She buried her face in her hands, her voice barely a whisper. What have I done? Her chest ached with guilt, not just for what she had done, but for the pain she had caused her husband. She had to fix this. She had to reach Ryan before it was too late. "Ryan, please, you have to believe me," she cried, desperation thick in her voice. "Nothing happened after lunch. We went our separate ways. That's all. You have to believe me, it was just lunch." Tears streamed down her face as she scrambled for a way out. "I understand how bad this looks," she continued, her voice shaking. "And if the situation were reversed, I'd feel exactly the way you do right now. And I'm so sorry. Please, Ryan, can you try to forgive my stupidity?" I shook my head, my expression unmoved. "This goes beyond stupidity, Sandy. You did this with him. Of all people. The one person you swore you'd never speak to again." I leaned forward, my voice colder than I expected. "Can you explain why you got all dressed up for him? Why you took off your wedding rings? Why you were holding hands? Kissing him? Can you explain why you sat here, in our home, and lied to my face over and over again? Tell me, Sandy, does any of this mean nothing to you?" She winced at my words, shaking her head frantically. "Ryan, I know how this looks, but I took my rings off when I was painting my nails. I forgot to put them back on because I was running late. I swear, I wasn't trying to hide them." I let out a bitter laugh. "He knows you're married, Sandy. He knows we're married. And yet, he still wanted to see you. Still kissed you, right out in public. And you let him." She had no answer for that. "Because we both knew the truth. And you went along with it." I shook my head, my voice dripping with disbelief. "That excuse? It's weak, Sandy. You met up with your ex-lover behind my back, lied to me about it, and somehow you expect me to just brush it off." I let out a sharp exhale. "In my book, that's a direct violation of our marriage, our agreement." Her frustration started to show. "I don't know what else to say, Ryan," she huffed. "It was just lunch with a friend. And yeah, I wanted to look good. That's it." I scoffed. "That isn't it. You lied. You met with him. And you hid it from me. Do you really take me for a fool?" I leaned in, my voice firm. "That kind of thing doesn't just happen, Sandy. You planned it. You didn't even mention it to me. And when I saw the two of you kissing like that, it became painfully clear, you want something from him that I'll never be able to give you." Panic filled her eyes. "Ryan, baby, we can't get divorced over this," she pleaded. "It was nothing. He was in town, and he invited me to lunch. I know I shouldn't have gone, and I know how jealous you get, but we have history, Ryan. I thought after all these years, one little lunch wouldn't be a big deal." I stayed silent, waiting for her to keep digging her own grave. She swallowed hard. I guess. I dressed up to show him what he lost. To rub it in his face. To prove that I've moved on, that I'm happy without him. It still hurts when I think about how he left me back then, and I guess I just wanted a little, she hesitated, then whispered, revenge. I let that word hang between us. Then she kept going. Yes, I kissed him, she admitted, but it wasn't romantic. It was just like two old friends saying goodbye. You have to believe me, Ryan. I don't want anything to do with him. Please, let's fix this. I'll do anything you want. Anything. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Anything I want? She nodded eagerly, sensing hope. Yes, of course. I'll do whatever it takes, baby. Just tell me what to do. I leaned back, crossing my arms. All right, Sandy. You get one chance. And only one. Her eyes lit up, desperate to hold onto the sliver of hope I'd just given her. I have just one request, I said. She swallowed. Okay, what is it? I held out my hand. Let me see your phone. The color drained from her face. Why? She asked, her voice suddenly unsteady. I tilted my head, pretending to be confused. Well, Sandy, if this was really nothing, then there shouldn't be anything to hide, right? Her lips parted slightly, her hands gripping the table. I just want to check. Maybe scroll through some texts. I watched as her entire body went still. And that silence? That told me everything. I just want to see the messages, Sandy. To read what you two have been saying to each other. Her head dropped, eyes fixed on the floor. You don't need to see that, she muttered. Of course. She knew exactly what I'd find. She knew those messages would cut me to the bone, exposing things she never wanted me to see. I nodded, unsurprised. That's what I thought. I exhaled slowly, leaning back. So, let's go back to my original question. How do you want to handle this? The moment I said it, the waterworks started. She broke down, crying and begging me to forgive her, swearing she would never do anything like this again. I just sat there, watching her. I'd seen this scene before. It took me right back to my first marriage. Charlotte, sobbing, making empty promises, desperate to clean up a mess she had willingly created. And I wasn't going to be fooled again. This time, I knew better. Wait, please, Ryan, just wait, she pleaded. If I give you my phone, will you at least promise to give me another chance? Her voice cracked. You have to know how much I love you. I've never cheated on you before. I swear. She wiped her face, her fingers trembling. Maybe I got caught up in something stupid online. And yes, it was with him. My ex. But it was never supposed to mean anything. She sniffled, her words coming fast now. I acted like a teenage girl, Ryan. It was just flirting, just a few compliments. It felt nice, I won't lie. It stroked my ego. And I know how childish that sounds. But please, if I give you my phone, you have to promise you'll at least consider giving me another chance. I shook my head. I can't do that, Sandy. Her breath hitched. But I can promise you this, if you don't hand over your phone, we're 100% done. No discussions. No fixing this. My next move will be to call Mark Wilson, the divorce attorney I already spoke to, and tell him to file the papers this week. Her face paled. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She also knew exactly what I'd see if I opened those messages. 2 months' worth of romantic, intimate texts. At this point, her only hope was that I'd read them and somehow convince myself that it was just an emotional mistake, that nothing physical had happened, that she was still mine. Somewhere in her mind, she still clung to the belief that because there hadn't been any sex, I would understand. That I would forgive her. But when I unlocked her phone and opened the messaging app, her entire world collapsed. Sandy sat at the table, her head buried in her hands, sobbing. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, forgive me for being so stupid. I love you, Ryan. There's no one else. But her text messages told a very different story. The words on that screen cut me deeper than anything she could have said in person. The first message that hit like a knife to the gut. I still love you. Then, another one. I miss you. Rage boiled in my chest as I kept scrolling. Most of it was what I expected. Reminiscing about the past, sharing memories, talking about how much they missed being together. But then, I reached the final few messages. And those felt like a sucker punch right between the eyes. She had told him her marriage had gone stale. That she was bored. And Billy? He responded exactly the way a guy like him would. I miss your incredible body. I can't wait for us to become one again. My hands shook with fury. But then I saw her reply. A picture. A freshly shaved picture. And underneath it, her message. My little kitty can't wait. I slammed her phone shut in disgust and tossed it onto the table. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt, but I forced the words out. Well, that certainly opened my eyes. Sandy gasped, her face pale, her hands trembling. In the end, I'll forgive you, Sandy, I said, my voice eerily calm. But I won't stay married to someone I can't trust. And after everything I just read, it's crystal clear. I can't trust you. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I shook my head. This was exactly what I expected. And it's something I will not live with. Maybe Billy will make your life more exciting. Maybe now that he knows what he's been missing, he'll take you back. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. Ryan, no, please. I exhaled slowly. I will miss you, Sandy. But I'm going to find a woman who actually wants to be with me. A woman who won't lie to my face. A woman who won't sneak around behind my back like a coward. She reached for my hand. Ryan, please, what do I have to do to prove my love to you? How can I make you change your mind? I pulled my hand away. Nothing. Her breath hitched, her body shaking. When I saw you walking hand in hand with him, I continued. When I saw him holding you, kissing you, my heart broke. I stared at her, my voice raw. And now? Now I know you sent him intimate pictures. Told him you still love him. And that you were bored with me. I let that last word hang in the air, watching as it shattered whatever was left inside of her. But honestly, I didn't feel bad. Not anymore. You were bored with our marriage. I let out a slow, bitter exhale. That's more than any normal man could take. I shook my head, the weight of everything settling in. Honestly, it's sad. I look back at all the time we spent together, and it just feels wasted. Like I was nothing but a fool. A fool who worked hard. A fool who built a life. A fool who planned for a family. A fool who took care of you, took care of our home, only to find out that, behind my back, you were meeting up with your ex-lover. I locked eyes with her, watching the guilt twist her face. Do you even realize that if you'd just been honest when I asked you about your day, how differently I might have looked at this? I exhaled sharply. I mean, I could almost understand why you thought about seeing him again, given your history. Almost. But the real issue. I leaned in. The real issue is that you hid it. You lied. And the truth is, Sandy, if I hadn't caught you, you never would have told me. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that if I hadn't found out, you would have come home and told me everything. I held up a hand before she could open her mouth. Actually, don't even bother. I already know the answer. I sat back, my voice steady but cold. Trust, loyalty, honesty. Those are my core values. And you trampled all over them without a second thought. I let that sink in before continuing. You knew what I went through before. You knew what my first wife did to me. And yet, you still did this. Without a single thought about us. I shook my head. If you had called me and told me what you were doing, I wouldn't have liked it. But I would have let you go. I would have respected the honesty. I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. But now? Now I have to wonder, have you done this before? I looked her straight in the eye. If we stayed together, I'd always be questioning you. Wondering if what you tell me is the truth. Wondering what you're doing when I'm not around. Are you with him? Are you with someone else? I shook my head again, firmer this time. I can't live like that. And you don't deserve to be with a man who's constantly questioning your every move. So tell me, Sandy, how do I just forget how easily you lied to me? I paused, letting the question hang. Yes, dressing up for him? Kissing him? Taking off your wedding rings? All of that hurts. But the lies? The deception? I let out a humorless chuckle. That's what's unforgivable. I ran a hand through my hair, my voice final. What I do know for sure is this: I won't live like this anymore. Sandy sniffled, wiping her tear-streaked face. Ryan, you're right, she whispered. I made a stupid mistake. I lied because I knew you'd be mad. But I shouldn't have. Even if it was a mistake, I just... She trailed off, searching for something, anything, to justify what she'd done. But there was nothing left to say. I thought having lunch with him would be my way of getting closure, a little personal revenge, without actually crossing any real lines. I didn't think it would hurt anything. Sandy's voice was barely above a whisper now, her words shaky, full of regret. But now I see what I've done. And I truly regret it, Ryan. I would never want to hurt you, I swear. Can't we work on this? I want to be open and honest like you. She sniffled, wiping her tear-streaked face. My problem is, I always try to avoid hurting people. But now I realize that not telling the truth is actually worse. I shook my head. Well, Sandy, honesty and transparency were the only things that could have saved this marriage. And you weren't honest. You weren't transparent. Not until you had no choice. I looked her straight in the eye. The fact that you refused to let me read your messages until you realized you were out of options? That sealed your fate. Tears kept streaming down her face as the truth hit her, piece by piece. She knew the messages had exposed everything, not just the affair itself, but her lies, her deception, her lack of trustworthiness. And now she was facing the consequences. For the first time, she fully understood. An emotional affair could be just as destructive as a physical one. She told herself she would never make a mistake like this again. But it didn't matter. Because our marriage was already over. The end of us. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. We sold the house. Split our money. Walked away as nothing more than former lovers. No reconciliation. No revenge. No hatred. Just the smoldering remains of what used to be a happy marriage, burned down by deception, lies, and broken trust. I kept dating after that, but after being burned twice, marriage was no longer something I wanted in my future. And Sandy? She and Billy did eventually sleep together. 2 months later, she found out she was pregnant. The moment Billy heard the news, he dumped her. Told her it was her problem to deal with. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. And the next morning, he was gone. Just like that. Sandy was left completely alone, with nothing but the mess she had created. I heard from her sister, Debbie, that it broke her. Her self-esteem was shattered all over again. She fell into a deep depression, stuck in a constant state of misery. And when she lost the baby after a brutal fall down a long staircase in her apartment, her life turned from paradise to hell. All because of her vanity, her selfishness. And in the end, she just couldn't forgive herself. Not for destroying our marriage. Not for losing my love. And definitely not for losing my respect. Final thoughts. Trust. Loyalty. Respect. Mess up one, and you lose all three. Thank you for sticking with me until the end. Take care of yourselves. And take care of the ones you love. See you in the next episode of Cheating Secrets. Goodbye.